You ever walk into a store and they just have the exact thing you're looking for right there on the shelf? Well, I can tell you, it's definitely not magic. It's actually this hidden science called inventory management. And today, we're going to pull back the curtain and see exactly how it all works.
Okay, so at the heart of this whole thing is one simple, but man, is it a difficult problem. I mean, look at this place. Every single one of those boxes represents a huge decision. Because if you have too much stuff, well, you're just burning money on warehouse space, on insurance, not to mention the risk that it all goes bad or out of style. But what if you have too little? Then you risk running out and boom, you've lost a sale. It is this incredibly high-stakes balancing act that literally every single business has to face.
All right, let's really break down those two opposing forces, because this is where it gets interesting. On one side, you've got your holding costs. These are basically the costs of just having stuff sitting around. You're paying for the warehouse space, insurance, and you got to account for stuff getting damaged or, just walking off. Then on the other side, you have the costs of not having enough stuff. We'll call them ordering and shortage costs. Every single time you place an order, there's a fee, right? A delivery fee. And if you completely run out, well, that's a lost sale. You might even have to pay a fortune for an emergency shipment. It's like you're being squeezed from both sides at once.
And that, right there, is the fundamental challenge we're talking about today, the inventory balancing act. It's this puzzle that every single business has to figure out. So how in the world do they find that perfect sweet spot that keeps costs as low as possible on both sides?
Well, believe it or not, for more than 100 years, the answer has come in the form of what really seems like a magic formula. It's a solution called EOQ, and it promised to give businesses the perfect, mathematically proven answer to this whole mess.
So what is EOQ? It stands for Economic Order Quantity. And honestly, it's pretty much what it sounds like. It's a model that's designed to calculate the single best, most optimal number of items you should order at any given time. The goal? Super simple. Find the exact quantity that makes your total inventory costs as low as they can possibly go.
Now, for the EOQ model to work, it has to assume a perfect world. And this graph, this shows you exactly what that perfect world looks like. See that red line? That's your inventory level. You start with a full order, you sell your stuff at a perfectly steady, predictable rate until you hit zero, and then, bam, a brand new order arrives instantly. It creates this clean, predictable sawtooth pattern. Of course, we all know reality isn't this neat, but making this assumption is the only way to make the math work.
And here's the amazing part. To solve this super complex problem, this huge balancing act we've been talking about, the formula only needs 3 key numbers. That's it, just 3. So let's break down what they are.
Okay, here are the 3 magic ingredients. First up, we've got D for annual demand. Pretty straightforward. That's just how many units you expect to sell in a whole year. Next is CO for cost per order. Think of this as the flat fee you pay every time you hit that order button, for things like delivery and processing. And finally, CH for holding cost. This is what it costs you for just one single item to sit on your shelf for a full year. Got it? Good.
So you take those 3 numbers, you plug them into this formula right here, and out pops the magic number, your economic order quantity. What this formula is doing really is finding the exact point where 2 lines cross. One line is the cost of holding inventory, which goes up the more you have. The other is the cost of ordering, which goes down the more you order at once. That perfect intersection point, that's your sweet spot. That's the lowest total cost. Okay, let's look at a real-world example to see how this works. There was this company, Waddlington, and they were ordering 5,000 barrels at a time. So they did the math on their ordering and holding costs, and their total bill for just managing all that inventory was $4,200 a year. And get this, that's before they even paid for the barrels themselves. That's just the cost of having them around. But then, they plugged their numbers into the EOQ formula, and the formula told them the perfect order size wasn't 5,000 at all. It was 3,162 units. So they switched, and by making that one change, their new annual cost dropped to just under $3,800. That's a savings of over $400 just by using a little bit of math. Now that is the power of EOQ.
All right, so problem solved, right? We've got the formula, we can all go home. Well, not so fast. Because this is the part of the story where the perfect world of math crashes right into the messy world of reality.
So imagine this. You've done the math. The formula says your perfect order size is, let's say, 300 units. You're all set. But then your supplier calls you up and says, hey, listen, if you buy 600 units instead, I'll give you a 3% discount. So what do? The math says 300 is optimal, but man, that discount is tempting.
Well, you got to run the numbers again, but this time you have to factor in the total purchase price of the goods. Let's look at this table. That first row, that's our EOQ order of 300 units. The total annual cost is $909,000. Now check out the second row. Yep, we're buying more, so our holding costs shoot up. But that 3% discount on the purchase price itself is so big that our total cost actually goes down. And look, with a 5% discount for buying even more, the total cost drops again. So here's the big takeaway. The EOQ is a fantastic starting point, but it's not always the final answer.
But supplier discounts aren't the only wrench in the gears. What about that other big assumption we made? What happens when demand isn't that perfect, predictable straight line? What happens in the real world where things are, chaotic?
Yeah, in the real world, demand looks a lot more like these jagged, unpredictable lines. Some weeks you sell way more than you thought, other weeks, not so much. If you just blindly followed the simple EOQ model, a sudden spike in sales could leave you with totally empty shelves. So to stop that from happening, businesses build in a cushion. It's called safety stock. It's that green area you see at the bottom. It's the inventory you hope you never, ever have to touch, but you're sure glad it's there just in case.
Okay, so up until now, everything we've talked about has been about one thing, finding the perfect amount of inventory to hold. But then, in the 1970s, this new, really radical idea came along that asked a completely different question. What if the goal wasn't to manage your inventory, but to get rid of it entirely? This idea led to a radically different approach.
And that approach is called just-in-time, or JIT for short. And let me tell you, it flips the entire EOQ philosophy completely on its head. The goal of JIT isn't to optimize your inventory, it's to eliminate it. The whole idea is to have materials show up from your suppliers at the literal last second, right at the exact moment they're needed for production. You reduce the inventory you're holding to as close to zero as humanly possible.
And wow, when a company can actually pull this off, the benefits are just enormous. I mean, your holding costs basically disappear. The whole system gets leaner and more efficient, which means faster production, more productive workers, and way less waste. It is the definition of a high-risk, high-reward strategy. Okay, we have covered a lot of ground here, from a magic formula for balancing costs, all the way to a philosophy that tries to get rid of inventory completely. So let's wrap this up and distill it all down to the most important things to remember.
And really, it all comes down to two very different questions. The traditional approach, the whole EOQ model, is really an optimization problem. It's asking, what is the absolute best amount of stuff for us to hold? But just in time, that's more of a philosophical challenge. It asks a much more profound question. Wait a second, why are we holding any of this stuff at all?
And ultimately, that's the real secret to all of this. Mastering your inventory isn't just about finding the right formula or counting the boxes on the shelf. It's about developing a culture of constantly questioning why every single one of those boxes is even there in the first place.